The crime thriller, The Herd, has become one of Nigeria's most talked about films of the year, not only for its gripping storyline, but for the national debate it has sparked. With over 30 million views and a fearless exploration of kidnapping, insecurity, and moral tension, the film has ignited conversations about stereotyping, representation, and the responsibility of storytellers in shaping public perception. Now, joining us is actor, director, and producer Daniel Effiong, one of Nollywood's most respected creative voices, known for his sharp storytelling, socially conscious narratives, and commitment to elevating the craft of African cinema. His latest film has pushed the country to confront uncomfortable truths, and today we're diving into the story behind The Herd and the storm around it. But in case you haven't seen the trailer, let's take a look and come back to discuss.
You're calling again. Hello?
Do you have the money?
Hey. Mommy, there is Ola call me.
If you don't get the full money by the end of today, this is the last time you talk to your husband.
Hey. I don't want you worrying about me.
Do you think this is the Sheik's operation?
It never comes this far, sir.
Saboda shi kansa Sheik
sai da ya kashe wasu sannan ya zama sarki a inda yake a yanzu.
Did Kosi know that he was going to be kidnapped?
I'm
Akwai wanda muka yi magana da shi yana saya. Sai da su zai.
We need to escape from here, please.
Kuma in kashe ki anan. Babu abun da zai.
ní láti kó mi kíákíá o. Wọ́n ti wá ìwà
That was The Herd, and we have in the studio Daniel Effiong. First off, I have to say congratulations on this movie. It's doing really well. I think when I checked this morning, it was still the #1 movie on Netflix. So congratulations, because this is your directorial debut. Yes. But I want to touch on so many things, because this movie has broken a lot of, in fact, we say shake table, but this one has shattered the tables. Yeah. But I want to start from the origins and intention of this story. The Herd touches a very raw nerve in Nigeria. The ongoing security crisis. Was there a personal experience? Was it a societal observation, or just research that made you think, okay, let me tell this story, let me dramatize this story for the Nigerian people and for the world?
Well, thank you. I feel it has been a number of factors. I, for one, grew up in Nigeria in the military era. And my family was one of those families impacted by the military regime in Nigeria. And for me, it was a situation of Nigeria happening to you and your family and being totally helpless about it. I grew up with stories about my mom doing everything that she could to save my father when my father had his issues with the military government in Nigeria. Fast forward several years later, when my daddy came back from prison, I would take road trips with my father, along Nigeria. And it was a time to bond with my father and get to know him better, because he was absent for many years in my life. So road trips with the family was special to me. Fast forward several years after that, and road trips are impossible for me today.
The past,
exactly. I can't fathom going on road trips with my own family. So it got me thinking. And when I wanted to tell a story, and I contacted the writer had presented 3 synopses to me, Lani Aishida. And the synopsis of The Herd just stood out to me, because the synopsis was a man traveled to Ekiti for his best friend's wedding and got kidnapped on his way. And his wife, who was back in Lagos, went through hell and high water to try and get him back. So that just rang a bell in my head. And I'm like, this is such an important story to tell, especially for the way Nigeria is today. And I chose to tell that story.
So when you embarked on this project, did you at any point anticipate the scale of national debate it would trigger, or the intensity and the direction of the backlash? Did it catch you off guard?
Absolutely not. I just wanted to tell a story that was heartfelt. And the way I know a story will be heartfelt is if it is heartfelt, if I feel it in my heart. You know, I'm the first sort of litmus test to the storytelling. And if I'm moved by the story and the telling of this story, then I'm sure that someone else will be moved by it. So that was just what I went out to do, to tell an impactful story. It totally caught me off guard that, you know, it would become such a center of a national debate.
And, you know, a major criticism is that, you know, the film profiles Fulani herders, but you made a deliberate choice to portray criminals and victims across Hausa, Igbo, Yoruba, and other groups. Why was it crucial for you to frame banditry as a national problem shaped by systems and not necessarily a single ethnicity?
Exactly, because I went out to, well, first, everyone knows what is happening in Nigeria today. You know, banditry is a national issue. It's on the news. It's a no-brainer. And so when I decided to tell this story, I went to do a little research, you know, reading about it and trying to find out its origin. And we all know it's hydra-headed. It's a number of factors, you know, different groups, different reasons. So you can't just pin one problem and say this is the cause of it and this group and that, like, this is the group responsible for it. It's so hydra-headed, this situation. So what I went on to do was to fashion out a story that would cut across somewhat. You know, that's just one story. And I often tell people that there are several stories to be told on this matter.
Yeah.
I just told one strand of that story. If it bothers you so much, go ahead and tell your own strand. There's several, and there are several films that have been made about this same issue, you know. So this one just came out at an opportune time and it became topical. But there are several stories that have been told already. Yeah, so I went across to also try and humanize the perpetrators, you know, in the story and not just make them one-sided. I made them victims of circumstance. You know, many of the players in this one were either victims who were kidnapped and now kidnappers.
And now became kidnappers
or
themselves.
people who were trying to escape the business and wanted to do one last thing to go into something else. Just several backstories behind these players. And then I also did something many people would consider clever, was to make the hero also from the same ethnicity, so that, you know, they're solving their own problems. I'm not saying you are one, you're all this type of character. We're saying even amongst this same ethnicity, they are heroes. They are intelligent people who are devout Muslims who will go out of their way to try and solve the problem.
Well, Nigerians are incredibly sensitive around ethnic identity and presentation.
Right.
And you've touched on the fact that, you know, the film also features a Muslim, a northern detective as a hero, a detail that many critics have ignored, or maybe they just watched the trailer, I don't know. What were you hoping that this character would communicate about the complexity and shared humanity across regions?
Well, for one, that, you know, not all Northerners are evil. That's a no-brainer. I grew up in the North. I was born in the North. I have so many friends in the North who are even Fulani, who are Muslims. You know, before I went on to tell this story, I consulted widely with Fulani, with Muslims, with Northerners. You know, even the actors helped me to bring this story alive, give me some tips on what to do and what to stay away from. So it was well researched and well interrogated before we went on to tell this story, you know. So portraying that character, it would surprise you to know that initially that character wasn't a Northern Muslim. That the cop was actually from the South. So it was after consultation, you know, I'm like, it would be far more effective to drive this narrative if I made this character a Northerner, not just a Northerner, a Muslim. And introducing the character as well, we see him in the hospital with his family praying. So he's not just a Northerner, he's a devout Muslim, right? So we establish him like that, you know. We see that he has a family. We see that he would leave his family behind and go and solve a crime case, you know. So his heart is in this thing. He's passionate about. So what are we saying about these people? That it's complex. You know, there are people who, yes, are bandits, but there are people who are also passionate about their work, passionate about the country, and will do all that it takes to solve the problem.
And when you flip it on the end, we think about the Yoruba pastor. I don't want to give too much away because I want people to go watch it.
Right.
And also the prejudiced Igbo family as
Exactly.
well. So do you think that there's just an intention, Nigerians have a tendency to just assign blame narrowly? And do you hope that maybe your movie addresses that as well?
Pretty much so.
Yeah.
I think Nigerians have a way of fixating on the negative and just, you know, picking on it and building a narrative around it. But what the story does is to call people away from that and say, hey, let's talk. Let's debate the issues. We have, like you said, have characters across the different ethnic divides that have issues. We're saying that evil and good are not tribe sensitive, are not, you know, faith sensitive. There are evil people across the tribes, evil people across faiths, you know. And what we're saying is amongst those tribes and those faiths are also good people who must stand up, who must rise to the occasion.
Well, talking to you now, and someone just sent me this question now. Person said to ask you, some argue that filmmakers should avoid certain portrayals because international audiences may misinterpret them. Do you believe that storytelling should ever be softened or censored to protect the country or region's image? And at what point, this is now my question, does avoiding difficult narratives, especially when they reflect reality, especially the reality of Nigeria, become a form of silence, complicity, or even denial?
I don't think art should be silenced. I think artists, storytellers must be allowed to speak their truths. It's a reaction to society, and what you do with art is you take in society, take in what you've experienced, and then you reflect it in your work. And I think that shouldn't be censored. What should happen is we should have a complexity, or we should have multiple voices. We should have all types of creatives, all kinds of storytellers express themselves. And if the government feels a need to steer the conversation in a certain direction, the government must commission artists and tell them to tell the kinds of stories they want to tell. But when individual independent artists go out to create stories and tell stories, they must be true to themselves. If they love Nigeria, let them tell stories about love for Nigeria. If they feel hurt by Nigeria, let them tell stories of hurt. But truth, they must speak out.
Yeah, 100%. I want to ask you, when the film came, I remember it came out in cinemas, and then it came out on Netflix. I think it was when it got on Netflix that it just kind of like exploded. But what was interesting was that it coincided very closely with the Kebbi kidnappings and I think it was the Niger State kidnappings as well. How did it feel, watching real life events unfold that almost mirrored the world that you created? And did that parallel change how you interpret the film's impact?
It was nerve-wracking for me. We had signed the deal a month before. The date was set a month before.
That's crazy.
So there was no way to know that 2 days before or a day before there were going to be kidnappings. Absolutely not. When it had happened, and I forget the exact day, maybe 2 or 3 days before the film, and I knew the film was going to come out, I was kind of scared, because first of all, people are still traumatized by the issue. And when you reflect something so traumatizing so soon or so recent to the trauma or to the cause of the trauma, then people can react negatively to it. So I was a bit worried about that. But what was fulfilling for me was people saw it. And then it brought it home to a lot of people. We can be here in the South and things can be happening in the North and you're so detached from it and you're saying, oh, them. But cinema or film has a way of putting you there and you're living vicariously through the characters and you feel it. You feel their pain, you feel the fear, you feel the worry. And that was, spot on for me and I was really grateful for that.
So do you believe that this film can redirect the public outrage that we're seeing from filmmakers to the actual criminals, the actual networks, and the institutional failures that still plague the systems and enable kidnappings in Nigeria?
I think what it does for me is make Nigerians realize that we're all complicit. It's not just a matter of them versus us. We are all in this together, and we must take responsibility. We must lend our voices to the crisis and speak out. Do your part. Do your own little bit. If it's to tweet about it, if it's to protest about it, if it's to write about it, if it's to tell your father or your mom.
To make a film about it.
If it's to make a film about it, sing a song about it. But that collective awareness, national awareness is what I think it has triggered, and it's a blessing.
I wonder if after going through such a polarized reaction, has this experience made you more cautious about telling sensitive stories, or has it reinforced your commitment to telling uncomfortable truths?
I think it has reinforced it. I'm used to, the first ever film I made was a documentary film, and it was Skin. And of course, it was topical as well. And people talked about it, about colorism.
Oh, the one where Beverly?
Beverly, yes.
That was you?
I directed it, yes.
That was a really good
Yes,
documentary.
you,
Oh, wow.
you.
Okay. You don't study this thing for a long time. Okay,
exactly.
Okay.
So, this is my first narrative fiction. That was my first documentary ever, So, and again, it was topical. So for me, yes, I would always tell a story that would hit a nerve, that would make people reflect and would make people, go into debates and just talk about the issues. For me, the scariest thing is to do a film that nobody cares about. That would be a failure for me. People have to care about the stories that I tell.
All right, then, as we wrap up, for people who have condemned the movie, even without watching it, maybe just seeing the first few minutes, what would you say to them about the story that you were actually trying to tell and the Nigeria that you were holding a mirror up to?
I would say they must watch the film first and realize that it's called The Herd for a reason. It's called The Herd not just because of herders and because of cows and cattle, but it's called The Herd because the message is a oneness. We must come together as one. On the day of the premiere, I dressed as a military general from the old days. I dressed as General Gowon. And I did that because one of his favorite saying was to keep Nigeria one is a task that must be done. That was his favorite saying from that war, Biafran war era. And for me, I did that because that's the message of The Herd, that we must come together as one people with one voice and fight this thing that has threatened to shred us apart.
Brilliant. Daniel Etim Effiong, what's next for you? When are we getting our next movie? I know we're still promoting this one, but still, are you working on something else? I know you're full-time acting, but this directorial debut, I really like this direction.
Yeah.
So any expo for us?
There are a couple of things in the works. I'll just keep it at that for now. But let's see what happens next year or the year after.
All right, then fantastic. People, if you haven't watched The Herd, it's streaming live now on Netflix, and Daniel Etim Effiong has broken it down for us on the show today. I appreciate you, and thank you for clearing this up. It's a fantastic movie.